Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's video lecture, and we continue covering the somatic sensory division. This is second video that covers this PowerPoint. And we will talk about audition or your ability to hear stuff. Let's go ahead and begin. Now, in this video, we will cover anatomy of the ear. We'll pick up my pen. Now, the hearing and equilibrium are part of your special senses. You have general senses and you have special senses. Special means you have specific organs that are dedicated to that type of sensation, like your hearing or your balance. You have ear. Without your ear, you will not be able to receive the stimulus and feel it, right? You will not be able to hear and you will not be able to keep your balance. So let's look at structure of the ear. Now, ear can be divided into external ear, middle ear, and internal. Now, the job of your ear, you see over here, hearing and balance. Now, for hearing, you need all three parts. You need external, middle, and internal ear. For balance, you only need internal ear, right? So for example, if somebody was in a terrible car accident and there is a permanent damage to external and middle ear, this person will not be able to hear. But if inner ear is not damaged, then the person still will be able to keep his balance or her balance. That's what it says. External ear and middle ear are involved with hearing, and internal ear function in both hearing and equilibrium. Now, external ear has several parts. Some of them you need to know. The ear itself is called auricle. Helix is this border. This is lobule. This is external acoustic meatus or auditory canal. That external ear. Middle ear includes tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane is kind of separation between external and middle ear. Then tympanic cavity, three little bones inside, and two windows, oval window and round window. We will get into more details. And internal ear include this cochlea, vestibule, semicircular canals, and of course your vestibular and cochlear nerve that make one vestibular cochlear nerve or cranial nerve number 8. Also part of the middle ear, I forgot to tell you, is this auditory tube or pharyngotympanic tube. Pharynx is your throat and tympanic is this tympanic membrane. So it's pharyngotympanic or auditory tube. So here's a little bit more about your middle ear. It's a small air-filled mucosa-lined cavity in the temporal lobe. It laterally flanked, so that's the lateral side. Oh, sorry. Clear my drawings. I don't know why it's not doing it. I'm sorry. I need to be more familiar with all this writing and drawing. I apologize. All right, so what I was talking about, about the middle ear. So here's the cavity, air-filled, laterally flanked by eardrum or tympanic membrane, and the middle wall is a bony wall. So that's a bone. That's your temporal bone. And this medial wall contains oval window is right here, and round window or cochlear window, and auditory tube that connects middle ear to nasopharynx, so pharynga, tympanic or auditory tube, and function is to equalize pressure in the middle ear cavity with the external air pressure. So when external air pressure here increases, you want to equalize, so that means the pressure here is high, you want to equalize it with external pressure through this tube. That happens when you in airplane, for example, when you feel like your ears are plugged, if you open your mouth, that should help you to equalize the pressure and reduce this sensation of plugged ear. That's middle ear in more details here. Tympanic membrane, 3 auditory ossicles are called malleus. So right there, incus, this little bone, and the smallest stapes. And stapes connected to oval window. Here you can see round window. Also, you can see that those little ossicles are connected through joints. Those are synovial joints, so they can move, and their function is to transmit the vibration of the sound waves to this oval window. So you can imagine how if the sound vibrate this tympanic membrane, this vibration will pass through these bones to the window and it amplifies them. That means those bones need to have the ability to move, so we must have joints. We also have several ligaments that hold those bones in place. Right? 3 small bones or ossicles over here, malleus, incus, and stapes, right, that we already mentioned. We have ligaments that suspend those bones, and the bones are joined by synovial joints and transmit vibratory motion to the eardrum, or I'm sorry, of the eardrum to the oval window. So you can see ligaments right here, and you can even see several muscles. This bone is stapes. This muscle here is stapedius muscle. And this muscle is tensor tympani muscle. So it's attached to this tympanic membrane. Pharynga tympanic tube is shown right here. Yeah, so that's what we have on this picture. Okay. Trying to change my slide. Now, internal ear, let's look at next picture first, and then we will go back. So internal ear is made of bony structure. Now, bony structure shown here in this light brown color. So everything that you see here in the brown color, that's bony structure. Membranous structure, everything shown here in blue color, that's membranous. And sensory structure shown here in the purple color. So let's look at bony structures first. So we have cochlea, so it's right there. We have vestibule, that's the area over here, and semicircular canals. All right, so again, I'm talking about bony structure shown here in brown color. Then we have membranous structure, that blue one. Inside the cochlea, you have cochlea duct. So that blue structure is cochlea duct. So it says cochlea duct in cochlear. In semicircular canals, we have semicircular ducts. So that's easy, right? Semicircular ducts in the semicircular canals. And in a vestibule, so here's my vestibule, you have utricle, so that's called utricle, and saccule. So here, utricle in the vestibule and saccule in vestibule. And again, whatever blue part here is a membranous structure. And then we have sensory structure because we must have our sensory receptors to pick up stimulus. In the cochlea, this purple part is called spiral organ or organ of Corti, that sensory structure. In the vestibule, we have this sensory structure called maculae. Macula in anatomy means spot. So macula here, macula over here. In semicircular ducts, we have cristae ampullaris. Now, this part of the semicircular canal is called ampulla. You see, it's a wider part. So that's the ampulla, that's the ampulla. And the sensory structure inside is cristae ampullaris. And of course, you can see our neurons shown here in yellow that form nerves. So we have vestibular nerve over here and cochlear nerve. And then the fibers come together forming vestibular cochlear nerve, or nerve number 8, or I would say it's better 5, 6, 7, 8. That's cranial nerve number 8. So you see the facial nerve over here, but it's not really relative to the structure. Right now, let's go back to the slide that we skipped, the previous slide. And that's what it says. Internal ear, you have Boney labyrinth, or Boney structure, it's called labyrinth. Channels in the temporal bone, 3 parts, vestibule, semicircular canals, and cochlea, and membranous labyrinth, series of membranous sacs within this Boney labyrinth. Now, there is a fluid everywhere. And in a Boney part, we have a fluid called perilymph. And inside this membranous structure, we have fluid called endolymph. So that would mean that you have fluid here, right, in the Boney structure. That's your perilymph, or everywhere over here where your brown parts are. And inside this blue membranous structure, you have here, everywhere inside this blue structure, you have your endolymph. Now, vestibule, it's a central egg-shaped cavity of the Boney labyrinth, contains 2 membranous sacs that I already told you, saccule and utricle. So saccule continues with cochlear duct. So you can see that's a saccule here, and it's continuous with the cochlear duct. That's a cochlear duct. And the utricle continues with semicircular canals. All right, so if you look over here, the utricle continues with semicircular canals. So let me say that's a saccule, and you see connection with cochlear duct and utricle right there with semicircular canals. Right? Remember, that's a membranous part. And inside this sacs, inside saccule and utricle, you have receptors. Equilibrium receptor regions called maculae, and they respond to gravity and changes in the position of the head. We call it a static equilibrium. So pretty much if you have your, let's say if you're in a car and you close your eyes and the car start moving, you will feel that movement because of your saccule and utricle and those maculae, the way you have your sensory receptors, right? So you don't need to see that car is moving to feel this movement. That's a function of vestibule. Semicircular canals, we have 3 of them, anterior, lateral, and posterior. Sometimes instead of posterior, they call it superior. So they both are fine, anterior, lateral, superior, or anterior, lateral, and posterior. and each define 2/3 of a circle. So it's not complete, it's kind of a little bit more than half. Inside those canals, you have membranous semicircular ducts that communicate with utricle. And inside those ducts, you have ampulla, right? Ampulla of each canal houses equilibrium receptor called crista ampullaris. So again, if you go over here, you have your here anterior, you have your posterior, you have your lateral. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess instead of anterior, they call it superior. So superior, posterior, and lateral, or anterior, posterior, and lateral. But you have ampulla, this wider part, and inside you have cristae ampullaris. Now, semicircular canal respond to angular or rotational movement of the head. So if you close your eyes, you're sitting on a chair, and this chair can rotate, and somebody rotates your body. You don't need to have your eyes open to feel this rotational movement. That's semicircular canals. And cochlea. Cochlea is a spiral, conical body chamber. So you can see here on the picture, so it's inside your temporal bone. It coils around a bony pillar called modiolus. I'll show you on the next picture. Inside, you will have your membranous structure, cochlear duct, which houses the sensory structure called spiral organ or organ of Corti for hearing. So if you look to the next picture, you can see modiolus, right? So here's the modiolus, and then here's your cochlea, right? So that's a cochlea bony part. Inside, you have your cochlear duct shown here in a kind of pinkish, right? So that's a cochlear duct. Inside the cochlear duct, you have endolymph. But of course, you have another canals. You have canal above and below your cochlear duct, and those are called, we call them scala or canals. Now, this is scala vestibuli or vestibular canal. This is a scala tympani, and this is a scala media or cochlear duct. Now, here in scala vestibuli and scala tympani, you have perilymph. So here you see some coronal section, I would say. So here's our scala tympani, scala vestibuli, and cochlear duct. Now, if you look here, you can use scala to sound more professional, right? So scala vestibuli, scala tympani, or you can just use vestibular canal and tympanic canal. So vestibular canal and tympanic canal, you have your perilymph over here. So that's a part of this bony structure. And that's our membranous structure, that is cochlear duct. Inside the membranous structure, you have sensory structure, that is organ of Corti or spiral organ. So that's what it says. We have 3 cavities of the cochlea, and cavities of the cochlea divided into 3 chambers: scala vestibuli, scala media, scala tympani, or vestibular canal, cochlear duct, or cochlear canal, or tympanic canal. Now we can see, of course, even if it's a bony part here, it will cover by membrane, right? So that's a membrane covering your scala vestibuli. This is a membrane covering scala tympani, and it says here you have perilymph, you have perilymph, and this is cochlear duct, and you have endolymph over here. Now we are interested in a cochlear duct. Why? Because this is where we have our sensory part or our receptors for hearing. Now the roof of the cochlear duct is a vestibular membrane, right? So that's a vestibular membrane over here. That is the roof. And the floor is called the basilar, like on a base, basilar membrane. And sitting on the basilar membrane is our spiral organ. And here's our cells, by the way. Those are hair cells. They are receptor cells. And they synapse with neurons of cochlear nerve. So that's our cochlear nerve. And those are the dendrites. On the top of the spiral organ of Corti, there is another membrane called tectorial membrane. So that's a tectorial membrane, basilar membrane, and vestibular membrane. The cochlear branch of nerve 8 runs from organ of Corti to the brain. So that's nerve number 8, as I already told you, that's vestibular cochlear nerve, but that's a cochlear branch. So that's a cochlear nerve, and it runs from organ of Corti to the brain to carry this hearing sensation to your brain. Okay, so let's see what is next. And homeostatic imbalances of hearing. Now remember, for hearing, you need all your 3 parts of the ear. You need outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. And your sensory structures located only in the inner ear. So if a patient has problem with outer ear or middle, then we call it conduction deafness. When we have blocked sound conduction to the fluids of the internal ear. So in internal ear, remember, we have perilymph and endolymph. If the sound does not reach this sensory structures, if sound cannot reach the internal ear, if it cannot be conducted from the ear to the fluids of internal ear, then we call it conduction deafness. Can result from impacted earwax, perforated eardrum, or otosclerosis of the ossicles. When these joints, get stiff and there is no movement within this bony structure. Now, if problems affect your inner ear, then this is sensorineural deafness. Damage to the internal structure at any point from the cochlear hair cells to the auditory cortical cells. So the damage can be in the receptors, in this nerve, or even in cortex, in temporal lobe that receive a signal from internal ear. Then sensorineural deafness. So if you have a patient with hearing aid, what do you think? What kind of deafness can it prevent, right? So it helps you in what type of deafness if somebody has the hearing aid. Yeah, you're right. It's conduction deafness. If problem with their neurological structure, then hearing aid probably not gonna do any good to a patient. Of course, we have mixed hearing loss over here that can include both conduction and or conductive and sensorineural hearing loss. That's possible as well. Okay, so I think that's it for this part of the lecture. This is the second video lecture. Thank you for watching. You guys are really awesome. If you have time and patience to watch my videos, I really appreciate it. So this is the second video where we covered anatomy of external, middle, and internal ear. Next video will be about vision, and again, anatomy of your eye. And then the last video will be about physiology, right? Thank you again. I hope it was helpful.